Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. I have with me today the Chief Marketing Officer at Shyft, the one, the only, Curtis Levi Lindsay.
Dude, that's my...
Why do people call you Levi? Is that your middle? That's your middle name?
I almost said something dirty. I can't remember how edited this will be.
This will be highly edited. You can say whatever you'd like.
My mommy and daddy just wanted to call me by my middle name. I don't know why. That the Curtis is silent. Who knows what? It's just benign. It's benign.
Like a grammar thing.
Just a benign name at the beginning.
The P is silent.
Yeah.
The Curtis in your name is silent.
Yeah.
And it's just Levi.
Mm-hmm.
Has that affected you?
Mentally, physically, it's taken quite a toll on my life, for sure.
When people yell in a crowded subway station, "Hey, Curtis,"
I'll look.
So you still identify with it?
I tell people Curtis is like if I need to get my accounting on and do a spreadsheet, Curtis comes to play. If it's like, ooh, fun time, it's like the collar pops and Levi's out. Like, my wife knows, if we're talking finances, here comes Curtis. If it's a night on the town,
yeah,
here comes Levi.
I feel like I should adopt a similar strategy. Because my real name is Francis. And maybe Francis...
Is it really?
Yeah. Francis could maybe be the more formal.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I'm Frank... Then
that's when you want to be more serious.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a little on the nose. Has your life been filled with those "can I be Frank" jokes? How often has that come up in your life?
Regularly.
Okay.
Regularly. And then the people who are, saying the joke part of it, it's always hilarious to that person. It's like they say it without thinking that I've never heard that before.
Like, I got him.
Because let me be Frank, and then
you're 78, and so
7. I'll be 78.
You'll be 78.
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding. You're not a day over fabulous, Francis.
Thank you, Curtis.
Here we go. Do we both have ADHD, or is it just me? I need help.
I do. Self-diagnosed.
Yeah.
Well, Frank has ADHD. Francis, he's a much more solid kind of character. I could not be more excited to have you here today, in all seriousness, because you are one of the most creative and thoughtful and interesting people that I know. You have a fascinating background. I hope we can talk about that a little bit, that I think people would find extremely helpful. Outside of business, and you have this great career that is kind of aligned with the e-commerce space where we at eHub operate. So I'm really excited to dive into all of those things.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, of course. Well, why don't we just dive in?
Let's do it.
Where did you start? Where did you grow up?
From humble beginnings in Bountiful, Utah.
Oh, were you a Brave or were you a...
I was a Wildcat.
Oh.
Represent Woods Cross Wildcats.
Woods Cross, yeah. Nice.
Rough time. We were good at theater and pot, I think, at Woods Cross, doing pot.
Was that an accredited course?
No. But
that was like an elective.
It was an elective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you. Yep.
It was an elective. It was held in parking lot B. Woods Cross.
Certain time.
Grew up in Bountiful.
Every day, or was it just flexible?
Flexible.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course.
Yes. Okay. So humble beginnings at Woods Cross. College or no college?
I did. So I went to Salt Lake Community College for a year, went on an LDS mission, came back, and then did a little more slick. And then I met my wife on Tinder. Shout out. Tinder. Where are my Tindies at? There's no shame.
Being 78,
There's
I'm
no
not familiar with that platform.
Good. I think that's probably for the best. Being 78. Where were
Your
we? Oh yeah.
college
Oh yeah. And then I met my wife on Tinder. She was going to, it was Dixie State then. Now it's Utah Tech.
Right.
And she said, you can either move to St. George and marry me or wait till I'm done, which would have been like a year and a half later. And so I married her and then moved to St. George. And we both finished I finished my associate. She finished her bachelor's at Dixie State. And then came back up. And then I finished my bachelor's at Weber. And I did a Bachelor of Professional Sales at Weber.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, okay, I want to go into marketing, but I looked at the math required to do the marketing degree and I didn't want to do it. So I chose the professional sales degree because I was done at math 1090 or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, I'll just do the professional sales degree because I just want to check off the box that I have a bachelor's.
Well, remind me to ask you about that math and marketing. We'll get into your marketing experience at some point, and I want to know if math has come into play.
Math is the devil created math at the beginning of time.
I heard that.
Yeah,
somewhere.
to just torture. It's part of our experience on this earth to just be tortured is math.
So what? I like math because you can get to there's an answer.
Yeah, that's great. I do love math. I don't love doing it, but I love that it exists.
You
and
like
that there are other people
You
that
like
can
what other
do
people
it.
do. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Okay, so in your childhood, what was there something that you said, like I really like this? I don't know exactly what it's called, but kind of led you down this marketing path. Were there childhood experiences, something growing up that demonstrated that you would have some acumen in this profession?
I think I was always kind of a weird kid. I had hair down to my shoulders till I was like 16. And I was always wearing weird clothes and like I always demonstrated creativity. Like if it came to math, I sucked. But then if it was like we had to write a paper in English, I would write like a 5-page essay on like why Michael Jackson was innocent.
Of what?
Of
Some things.
we know traffic violations.
Yes.
I wrote a paper in 5th grade. It was called "Guilty Until Proven Innocent."
In
And
5th grade.
in 5th grade, because I was like, he is innocent, guys. The irony of that as a young little boy writing this paper, I now realize the irony as I'm saying it out loud. But anyway, I was always more creatively inclined. And I was always wearing, like, I wore Michael Jackson hats and I would like do Michael Jackson videos. My sister would record them on VHS.
Did you have zippers
Zippers
and one glove?
rainbow suspenders. I would have killed for the red Thriller jacket or the jacket from Beat It, the red leather.
Yeah.
I would have killed.
Which is the best? Maybe which is a better Michael Jackson video? Is it Thriller or is it Beat It?
Thriller. As far as video
Really?
goes. Beat It, I could record Beat It. Like
Have
the
you?
production
Did you?
value on
Did you?
I have and I did and I will again.
I think like Thriller was too like stage drama. Like
What are you even saying
didn't-
right now?
I thought Beat It was just more pure
It was-
Michael Jackson.
It was raw
talent.
and uncut. That's
Yes.
true. There was less of a crutch for Michael.
Yeah.
With all those special effects.
Yeah.
Who needs those?
Nobody. Michael didn't need those.
Michael doesn't need those.
Way beyond his time. Anyway, back to your childhood. You're writing papers to exonerate Michael.
What a great segue. Michael Jackson, back to your childhood.
So, okay. So you
Always creatively inclined.
You demonstrated this. Yes, you've demonstrated this creativity in your childhood. And did you consider doing anything else professionally?
I always wanted to be a stand-up comedian growing up. And I did some stand up in junior high and elementary and some in college. And I remember going to the dentist once and hearing that his schedule was like Tuesdays, Thursdays, and then like half day Fridays. And I was like, maybe that's what I want to
You
do,
wanna be a
is
dentist.
be a dentist. So there was a brief moment where I was into dentistry.
How long did that last?
When I found out how much school was involved in
There's
dentistry.
got to be math
When I
involved in
found out that
dentistry.
it was math went beyond 1090, then that I very quickly was not interested in.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you go through school, you get into this sales kind of program, you come out and you decide, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna become the best marketing genius in the history of marketing.
Well, what's funny is, so I feel like, I don't know if it was just being isolated in Bountiful, but I felt like like marketing jobs, I didn't know anybody that had a marketing job. And so I didn't have anybody to rely on. I remember calling people and asking them, hey, I'm going to do this professional sales degree. Do you think that's going to like hurt my ability to become a marketer down the road? And everyone I talked to was in sales. And some people would be like, oh, there's a little bit of marketing in my job. And I remember thinking, I'm just going to be in sales. Like, I don't think these marketing jobs that you see on like Matthew McConaughey, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, how he's like pitching, tell me you haven't seen that movie.
You know, it's so funny that you mentioned that because unfortunately, I have seen that movie, and I've seen that movie within the last 2 weeks.
That's
if
amazing.
You can imagine that. Yeah.
When I saw that growing up, I was like, that's what I want to do.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, I want to just pitch ideas and be the idea man. But then, and I was like trying to find someone who had that job in my life. I could not find anybody. And so I was like, I think I'm just going to end up in sales. And then I got so scared to death of ending up in sales, I ended up starting a business and then realizing that was really, 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 really hard. And then,
running a business, starting a business, and running a business.
I ended up where I am out of accident, I think. I didn't very intentionally end up here.
What was the business that you started?
So I was doing windshield repair for a guy, and I'd been doing it since high school. And when we went down to St. George, to school in St. George, I started a branch for the company down there, which it sounds fancier than it is. I just got a couple contracts with like Ken Garf and a car wash to do windshield repair at those places. And then I hired a couple employees. It was like a really small outfit. And then after a year, I remember the owner of one of the car washes said, hey, why do you need this guy up north? Like, why don't you just do this as your own business? So I called up the guy who was my boss at the time, and I said, hey, could I buy this from you? And he said, sure. And I gave him, I think it was like $2,500 to buy the business, which he could have, well, one, I couldn't have paid for it, so it's not like he could have negotiated more out of me, but it basically paid for the kit that I had. And then I had to learn how to like charge insurance, for rock chips and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I owned that for about a year.
Nice. And what was the most valuable thing you learned?
Well,
running that business.
Well, one thing that's cool is I learned a lot of the lessons the hard way, which was like, one, I learned about working capital because I hired a guy, and I remember I thought it was so cool because I went to my little apartment, my little college apartment, and watched Law and Order, and I would just get these dings of sales, and I was like, this is what they talk about. Like, I am an entrepreneur. Like, I am getting paid to sit here. And I was like, this is freaking sweet. And then he was a rough dude. I hired him like he was literally out of prison. But he was a good guy, and he was a hustler. But it came time to pay him his paycheck, and the cash hadn't come in from insurance yet. So I didn't have the working capital to pay him. Like, I was like, hey man, you're going to have to wait another like 2 weeks when I get paid by the insurance to be able to like actually start paying you. Luckily he was really patient about it, but yeah, I was like, oh, working capital. That's like, I didn't even know the phrases for this stuff, but you just like, you learn them by just diving in and getting to know it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, that's the best way rather than thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. Sometimes you do just have to jump in and hopefully make meaningful mistakes, but mistakes that you can just learn from.
Yeah.
And it doesn't collapse your business. Have you ever been in that experience?
Where it collapsed my business?
Something
Yeah. Vid Army. Yes. Vid Army collapsed.
Now was that your
operating agreements? Yeah. So I got out of the windshield. So I ended up actually becoming business partners with the guy I bought the business from. And I did that for like another year while I finished at Weber. And then I left that to start Vid Army with a buddy. And my wife was pregnant with our first, and I had just graduated Weber when we started Vid Army. And that was, spoiler alert, that was a great learning experience of everything not to do. A lot of those working hey, I did know working capital by then, but
there you go.
But I didn't know that, oh, hey, you should probably have an operating agreement with your business partner. Just basic stuff like that.
It's just a handshake and trust, and that didn't turn out so well.
No.
And how long was that business up and operational?
So 3 years until I left, and we had built it up to about 17 employees. It was doing 6 figures a month in revenue, in its heyday.
So this is also your experience on a more personal level, where you learned some valuable lessons.
Yeah.
Would that be accurate?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, my first panic attack was operating the business that third year when things started getting really hard, when we started butting heads as the cap table of the business. And I started getting frustrated and stretched beyond my capabilities. I mean, I was like trying to wrap my head around finances and employees and HR and clients and account management and creative work.
And a partner. You had a partner at this point?
So 2 partners at that point. One partner was deployed to California. So 33% is deployed in California and can't work on the business. 33% is wanting to go be with their family at home, but wanting to keep the equity and wanting to get paid a salary with not really a guarantee of like, I can have a job in the business. And that's really where things kind of came to odds. And then lawyers got involved and it was crazy.
Yeah. And could that have been avoided in some way as you look back on this experience?
Yeah, I think biggest learning experience out of that, I mean, agreements aren't like fail safe. Like there's ways to get around them and reinterpret them. But one thing I did learn is that like you get into business with people so quick. Like when you date somebody, you date them for a year. Sometimes when you get into business with somebody, it's like, I've known this person for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so I think if the biggest thing I learned is have an agreement in place and then you can trust. Don't just trust and then not have an agreement.
Yeah. Any other issues that came out of that experience? I mean, you've talked about having agreements in place and maybe other ways to avoid the circumstances that you found yourself in 3 years into the business. What about you personally? How did you come out of that?
It was rough. So one big learning was tying my identity to outcomes and tying my identity to the business itself, because we built in public, and that was with limited marketing budgets and a bootstrap business. We were really just building in public on LinkedIn as a way to get leads, and it was working. That's how we got all of our business. We closed Amazon because I got known as someone who had a video production company, and I got tagged in one of the VPs of advertising at Amazon. I got tagged in one of the comments when they were looking for video. So it was really beneficial to build in public. But because of that, my identity was very much also tied to the business. It was That's Levi. He founded VidArmy. Like, you know, you talk to Johnny Hanna and it was like, oh, that's Johnny Hanna from Homie. Like, it's very common to tie entrepreneurs to the business that they found, especially ones where they're very loud about it and very, they're good at self-promotion of being the owner of that business. And so when that gets yanked away, it's like, well, wait, crap, I'm a failure. Like, the business failed, and so I'm a failure. And I kept telling myself, I'll be happy when VidArmy succeeds. I'll be happy when VidArmy has this much revenue. And so when VidArmy fails, it's like, well, crap, that was what I was holding out on to be happy, so I'm not happy now.
So how do you approach things differently now? I mean, that's an unbelievable learning experience. And how do you approach life differently?
Well, I now realize that you can always start another business. You can always get another client, but you only have one family. You only have one life. And a lot of our time is spent worrying about things that actually are fixable and don't matter.
You talked in the past about taking some time off. Is that as a result of this experience as well? The just stepping away for some period of time, getting whatever recharge you need, and then stepping back in?
Yeah, one of the biggest people would tell me when I was in the thick of it, and I think it was something I had to experience to really learn. But I would think, if I go on a vacation and put my phone away and don't answer, I'm going to lose, the entire business is going to crumble. In all reality, maybe you lose a client. And I would think, I can't lose a client. I can't go out of town and lose a client. But it's such a catch-22, because the truth is you need to go out of town so that you can gain 3 more clients. And maybe you lose one, but, and frankly, going outside of business, it's better that you lose a client than lose yourself. And I would go on vacation, and my wife, it sucked because I'd be angry and ornery, because I remember being on the beach in Hawaii, and one of our videographers deleted, we had an A cam and B cam always on set, and our videographer deleted the entire B cam. So we only had the A cam. And it was really important because we edited in such a way that we had to have an A cam, B cam, or else it'd be all choppy. Anyway, so I'm on the beach in Hawaii, and my wife is trying to enjoy herself, and I'm sitting here calling and seeing what we can do and talking to the employee and walking them through it. It's like, I wish that I would have just been like, oh, whatever, like, we'll lose the client, or hey, just deal with it, whatever. Like, I think it takes more experience. I think it takes losing a lot of clients and bouncing around to different things, and even losing a business to realize, like, there is life after losing client. There is life after losing a business. And that allows you to enjoy life in the present, is to realize that there's just an abundance of that stuff, but there's just one moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I thought that was super interesting in listening to some of the stuff that you've done in the past, because it's hard to, you get so ingrained in the success of your business and what you're trying to do, and that you forget about all of the other stuff. And it's really difficult to step away. It can be really difficult to step away. And once you realize that time away is almost as valuable as being in the business every day, then, I mean, it's something that every business owner, everyone who's working in a business, needs to learn.
Yeah.
So you've had this really interesting career to the point where you are now. It seems like you've landed in a really, really good spot with Shyft.
For sure.
That was a question.
I couldn't, yeah, I was like, wait. To my CEO, it wasn't a bad pause.
We could probably edit this out. Should we start over?
Edit it to where I answered right away. Yes.
Excitedly. So, and do you find yourself, like, based on where you are currently, where you were when you started, like, how would you judge yourself? Where would you put yourself on the scale of a professional in the business every single day?
Oh man, that's a good question. I still think I have a lot of experience that I need to have. Um, I there's a lot of cool things I'd still like to do. Um, I don't know. I One of my favorite phrases is be easily pleased but never satisfied.
Mm,
Um, it's it's being grateful for where you are and what you have, but not being satisfied and getting complacent.
sure.
I have a hard time with the opposite of always wanting to be better, that I forget to have gratitude of where I'm at. And um, so I don't know. I'd like to be in a place where I'm more easily pleased and never satisfied, but I'm more just never satisfied.
Gotcha. Well, let me ask you about what you're doing currently. So obviously, eHub, we work in the e-commerce world and in the shipping and logistics technology, and we have several clients who are our brands, and those clients might find what you do particularly interesting. So maybe you could take a few minutes and just educate the listener about Shyft.
Yeah, it's funny. In the last year, we've really figured out we had to kind of take a look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what do we do that nobody else does better than us? And we do a lot, so it kind of we had to take a look. Okay, we do product development and supply chain, and we make tech packs and blah blah blah. And we had to take a look. It came down to, we find money in people's supply chains. So we take a look at your supply chain and we figure out where there's either cost savings or opportunities for you to have more working capital through a line of credit, or whatever it may be, or faster lead times. So we have offices in Mexico, China, and Vietnam. Maybe you could be in Mexico, so you have faster lead times coming into the US, or maybe you need to be in Vietnam so you can avoid tariffs in China. Or a lot of people tend to pick a supply chain and kind of just grow with it. And we come in and analyze it and say, are you in your best, most optimal supply chain? Because for a lot of companies doing over 2 million a year, it can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars if your package is a little too big. Like we've found hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings for companies, and saying your packaging could be shrunk by an inch. So there's just a lot of things that a lot of levers to pull, and we go in and we analyze it all, and we're your supply chain expert.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. We deal with that all the time. And in fact, I just received a package from Amazon. No, it wasn't Amazon. I'm going to throw Amazon right under the bus. It was from another company, like a marketplace. And it was
Let's call it. It rhymes with Schmamashon.
it was a license plate frame in a box almost the size of your chair. Like so much waste in that. And that's something that you guys would go in and figure out. Now you'll do everything from the start to the finish. Is that correct? I mean, you'll take a product design or even help build, manufacture it, build the packaging for it, help with the whole process.
Yeah. So we have a design team and an operations team here in the U.S. in Orem, and we'll take it from concept, or we'll take an existing product and find improvements while we're finding the cost savings. A lot of time we even find we can save you sometimes, like, hey, we saved you $1 on your cost of goods and we improved the quality because we made you a tech pack for standardized manufacturing, and then we have quality that are boots on the ground in your country that can go visit your factory on a weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever it is. So it's just everything to do with the product until it gets to the 3PL. Once it's to the 3PL, that's where our expertise really stops, and that's where your guys' begins.
Absolutely. Nice. Very nice plug. Is there a brand or is there a customer that you can tell us about that people might know about, and even take us through how you've worked with that particular client?
Yeah, I think Thread Wallets is a good one. It's kind of cool to see Shyft and Thread kind of grew up together, and we're really blessed to be tied to customer growth. It's very much in our interest to make sure they grow, and that we can be a good partner. And I think Thread is a really cool example of us working very early on, from early stage prototypes from Kobe Bauer, and taking their designs and then making it come to life at a sustainable margin, and changing companies and factories as they've grown. And it's been cool to be a part of the story. We're kind of the brand behind brands, that there's some that I can't mention that you would definitely know, but and we don't mind being that, because we do the unsexy stuff for them so that they can go and sell product.
So, how far along was Thread in the design or manufacturing process when they came to you and said, "Hey, we have this thing"?
Man, it was from what I understand, it was really early on. I've only been with Shyft like a little over a year, but Shyft is 7 years old, and Thread is I think it's 5 or 6 years old. And so I think Thread might have been, like a year or so. Man, don't quote me on any of this, but
I don't have to, because it's being recorded.
So it's recorded, but you don't say anything about it later. So it was very early on, from what I understand.
And when you talk about, if you're not familiar with Thread, by the way, like, they have all of these cool products. In fact, I purchased one. I did a bike race, a long bike race, and I like to carry my credit card and ID with me, but my wallet is also this thick.
Yeah.
So
are you the George Costanza wallet guy?
It's difficult in the back of your kit on a bike. And so I just got one of the little Thread wallets that, the pocket, you just slide your stuff in there. It's super convenient, super nice.
Yeah.
And when you jumped into that, or when you got involved with that, and they said, we want to produce these particular wallets, at that point, do you take over? Is it collaborative? How does that work with the client?
It's very collaborative. I mean, Thread will talk directly to the factories, but then we're there helping with purchase orders, making sure that their design teams, because there's really design and development in making a physical product. And design can often be a little more aspirational, but then coming in and developing it so it's like, hey, we need this quality standard, making a tech pack, which I didn't know what any of this stuff was till I started at Shyft, but a tech pack is like that blueprint. Like, if making clothing was architecture, like, you need a blueprint, like you need a tech pack that says, for the factory, this is what I want. A lot of the times factories will kind of just wing it or make a tech pack of their own, and then they'll own and keep the tech pack. Like, it's just it's a partner that can come in and help liaison with the factories, help you find the right factories, do audits, negotiate with the factories, the rates. Someone right there speaking the language, and then speaking English for us here in the U.S. if we don't speak that language, and then on the ground there speaking the language to get stuff and faster, all that. This is where I need to do better as CMO. Honestly, they probably should throw me in the deep end on a client, because there's so much to supply chain that I'm missing out on, and that people don't give credit to people that do supply chains or do operations for e-com companies, because there's a lot, and we tend to oversimplify it.
Sure. Well, let's talk about that, your role with Shyft as Chief Marketing Officer. So, I think people get kind of a misconception when they say Chief Marketing Officer, like, you're the guy that makes TV commercials, or in this particular scenario, how do you work with Shyft to help spread their message?
So a content like this has been awesome, but it's been B2B is just so much more partnership based, which I actually really enjoy. It's getting to know people and providing value for other people and not asking for anything in return. And then one day they'll hit you back up and say, hey, I finally found like a referral for you, and it's the perfect person. So like, I like it because you just get to care about people very unconditionally. and then sales comes as a byproduct, or the leads come as a byproduct. Thankfully, I don't have to close them. I just pass them off to sales. So I just get to be the good guy, the relationship builder. But I actually really, really love that. In my other roles as creative director or at Kizik, VP of content, it was much more like put out good pieces of content and then people will resonate with it and move down the funnel or convert based on the content. But B2B marketing at Shyft has been very just helping be a part of the community of e-commerce service providers, and just being friends and building relationships.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to ask you two questions in one. You can answer it any way that you'd like.
Yeah.
I want to know either about the greatest success that you've had at Shyft or the biggest failure that you've had, and if you've learned anything from either of those experiences.
I think a big failure that I can say is that we wasted a lot of time in the beginning, because Shyft actually grew to, when I joined, they were at like 21 million. Last year we did 37 million in annual revenue. And I was the first marketing person, and then I also joined with a salesperson. And so that was, or someone to come on and lead sales. And so that was the first time doing it. It really just kind of grown through client growth and through referrals, which is really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fully bootstrapped. And so this was really our first attempt at marketing Shyft itself. And so there's been a lot of learning, and hindsight's 2020, obviously, but I can look back and say the biggest mistake has been marketing to people that aren't the right fit, and marketing Shyft in the wrong way with the wrong value proposition. So just either it's the right person but wrong value proposition, or wrong person and wrong value proposition, or any combination of those.
So are you getting better at that?
Yeah. And I'm a yes guy. I'm like, come one, come all, and I get revenue FOMO, and I want everyone's my ICP. And if they aren't, we'll make it work. I have a hard time. I have a hard time saying no, especially when that person's a friend and they're like, hey, can you help out with this project? Even if it's not a fit, I just have a hard time being like, no, we're just really not the right person for that. And so I love but hate that there is an ICP and there's a lane that you stick in, because I just like selling to everyone all the time, everything.
But have you had that experience of trying to force fit, and
Yeah.
it just doesn't turn out that well?
It ends up being a bad experience, because either we take it on and it wasn't within our wheelhouse and we pooped the bed, or we don't.
We say you shipped the bed.
We shipped the bed.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or we don't take it on, and I am like, well, why are we taking this on? And there's a little frustration on my part. So, that's the better one. I'd rather be frustrated than us take something on that we shouldn't.
Gotcha. Interesting. Well, I think we're going to move on to my favorite part of the podcast. If that's okay with you. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about Shyft,
No, that's it.
or any of the people that you were working with? About that one guy you work with that you were telling me about before?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Wait, which one?
That guy.
What are you talking about?
The big guy. I think you refer to him as the big guy. No? Maybe we'll just leave that.
The big guy?
Yeah, for another time.
Am
I putting you on the spot?
No, I don't know who you're talking about.
Oh, you're better at this than I am.
What do you
You're
mean?
better at this game than I am.
What, lying?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you got it. Perfect.
I legitimately don't know
Okay.
what you're talking about.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
You watch the Super Bowl?
Uh,
Generally.
the commercials.
Yeah, okay, so that's perfect. That's perfect. Well, now I have another question that's not part of this next segment, but were there any good commercials of the most recent Super Bowl?
Everyone just played it pretty safe. My favorite was Michael Cera, the CeraVe. But as a marketer, I just really geeked out over that campaign because it was genius. Because a couple weeks before, they started seeding it out into these interest campaigns of like Michael Cera walking around with CeraVe bags and Michael Cera at stores putting his face on them, and everyone started talking about it. And then there was some paid stuff where they started paying influencers to come out and say, Michael Cera founded CeraVe, and the Cera stands for Sarah, Michael Cera. And then like a week after that, they had apology campaigns of people saying, I'm so sorry I put out misinformation about Michael Cera owning CeraVe and starting CeraVe. And then they had professionals in lab coats saying it doesn't stand for Michael Cera, it's CeraVe, stands for ceramides or whatever it is, which is so genius because it's tied to an actual value prop of the product. It wasn't just like, oh, this is kind of a cool kitschy campaign. Like it was actually kind of direct response, which is genius. And then they released the Super Bowl commercials of Michael Cera, and it was a very well-rounded. It had organic, it had paid, it had direct response, it had brand, and it had hero videos, and it had UGC. It was like every part of the funnel and every like type of content. Sorry, I could geek out all day on that stuff.
I didn't expect that.
So that's why I liked the Michael Cera one.
Do you just naturally approach everything that you see with that kind of marketer mindset?
It's hard not to now. You know, it's like once you take the Matrix, the red pill or the blue pill, it's like I can't drive on I-15 without rewriting a bunch of billboard copy or resizing text on billboards. Or
how would you rate the billboards on I-15 out of 1 to 10?
We've gone so soft these days. Like too safe.
There's nothing really interesting.
Like
right?
the heyday of billboards was early days Homey or like Domo, and they would like go for it. And it was polarizing. Some people hated it, some people liked it, but it was getting talked about. And it was actually like a really good customer acquisition channel. But now I think it's just kind of starting to become more white noise.
Mm. Well, I'm going to write down this because that's for our next segment.
Okay.
But I have this question for you regarding back to the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Best Super Bowl halftime of all time. I'm going to give you 3 choices. Okay. Do you want to include? You can give me one of yours that I'll put in the 3.
So
what do you want me to nominate for you?
Oh, I know you loved Usher and the way you liked Usher getting handsy.
Well, I did like Usher.
Yes.
But the handsy part, you just made that up.
You know which part I'm talking about when he was like,
yes, I know which
I loved
part.
all the memes of like when you can't find your car keys.
And there was a controversy about Usher and being a little handsy with Alicia Keys. But then her husband came out and said, no, they've known each other forever. No big deal. Anyway,
I didn't know that.
I'm going to put Usher in that top 3.
I think it was definitely hands down Creed was the best halftime show. You know Creed. Let's go there.
Let's
do know Creed,
you're making that up.
There. Okay. They did the Super Bowl. Look it up. I want a clip. I want a clip of Creed's Super Bowl halftime show.
It's nobody remembers it.
Let's make our escape.
Your rendition of it is better than what they did.
Can you take me higher?
Okay.
You know you want to sing it with me.
Usher. Last year, which was like the old school hip hop. Dr. Dre, Snoop, all the guys.
Is that your favorite?
That was one of my favorites. But my favorite of all time, hands down, no question, Prince.
Yeah.
But okay, so
what year was that?
Prince?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm 78. It's a lot of
You know
Super
what that makes me think of though? Francis?
What's that?
Curtis Blow. Go there. Let's make our escape. Come on.
Okay.
No, honestly though, no, I'm serious. It actually No, this is on more of a serious note. Let's go there.
Let's just move to the next question.
That's my first time singing on a podcast.
How does that sound?
Can you there?
I think you might have a budding career uh,
Keyword
Is it?
being butt.
yeah, doing some background vocals for
Yeah.
somebody. Like I could see you behind like a John Mayer
Yeah.
type,
Yeah, I could do that.
Ed Sheeran, you and
Adele,
Hmm,
Sam Smith.
maybe. With which celebrity do most people confuse you?
Oh, Shia LaBeouf.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Shia LaBeouf and Adam Driver are like the number two.
Look
or
what
like
I have.
the top two.
Look what I have written down.
Adam Driver?
Adam Driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like our tired eyes or something. It's just like
Is that what
our
it is?
puffy,
Is that what you call that?
tired eyes. It's, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Do you mind those comparisons? Do you agree with those?
You know what my mom said the other day?
She said, Curtis.
I'm actually not kidding. She looked me in the eyes and she was like, "Can you take me high?" I'm never gonna let you live that one down. To hair player.
How did I get how did I become
I can't wait.
the receiver of all of this?
You're lucky.
Okay. Are you a weightlifting? a cardio? Or a yoga?
Ooh, I'm more like a let's wait and see. You know?
No.
Just like let's
Tell me more.
let's see how it shakes out. Like,
Shake weight. Is that what you're saying?
yeah.
You're a shake weight
Yeah.
kind of guy.
Yep. Most of all of this, what you see is from Shake Weight.
Thank you. That was 3 questions with Curtis Levi Lindsay. Okay.
Can you take?
Back to your marketing. Have you utilized all of your mathematical skills? Tell me how math has affected or not affected your marketing career.
Okay, I will say, I do respect math. Like, for instance, I had a friend of mine that I was doing some consulting for a couple months ago. And in order to effectively advertise, you do have to use math. Even if you're on the creative side, you have to understand, like, what is this piece of creative going to do? What kind of spend are we going to put behind it? What kind of CAC are we going to see? And then is it worth it for the LTV? And like, what's the average order value? And yada, yada, yada. This person was advertising a software, and I was like, hey man, I can come up with all these creative concepts for you. But at the end of the day, your cost to acquire a customer is unsustainable compared to what your in this situation, it wasn't like an average order value, but it was the revenue that they're going to gain from a user in a year or so. And then when you're a new startup, you have no idea what the lifetime value is. And so sometimes you can justify a higher CAC because there's a really big lifetime value potential. Like if it's a recurring subscription, let's say, it's okay to pay more than you are going to capture in your average order value or even your initial margin, because you know that you're going to get them to sign up and they're going to stay on for a year. So like if your LTV is $200, but you're acquiring them for 20 and that initial order is 10, it's probably fine, you know, like, So that's where math is really exciting for me is in that advertising space. And that's where I found it as a really good tool. I don't like to go much deeper than that, like high level stuff of like, does this work? If I need to, I'll do it. But a lot of the times it's more just getting the feedback from a performance team or from someone who runs performance on my team to come back and say, here's where we need to be, and then working with them on how we get there, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But I don't want to be the one calculating and finding those numbers, but you have to get good as a marketer, no matter what spot you're in, at interpreting the numbers into what you need to do next.
So I'm sure you've heard this, that you can't, it's really hard to measure it. Like, you're talking about the numbers.
That's what she said.
If you start singing right now, that's we're ending it right here.
Yeah. I want to so bad. It is bellowing up.
I'm trying to figure out another way to put this so you don't say something inappropriate again.
Can you measure
very
it?
difficult to. Can you justify the marketing expense?
So I think it's really easy to tell when there's a creative on your team that wants to do something selfishly, or wants to do something just because they think it's cool, or because they want to do it, or there's a lot of creators out there, or creatives that are portfolio over performance or portfolio over revenue. And I think it's easy to snuff those out because they're not asking about the data, and they're not asking about who the persona is they're going after, or they're not collaboratively working with performance to say what are the means to the end. Like, a good creative is hand in hand. There's no opposition between performance and creative, because they're starting with the means to the end in mind. When how do you say that? They're starting with the end in mind.
Yeah,
is like at the end of the day, this creative either has to, like, even if it's not as measurable, like let's say it's not like TV is kind of hard to attribute. Honestly, Facebook these days is hard to attribute, but it's either having a halo effect on your bottom funnel efforts, or it's not. And I don't know, it's always a tug and pull too, because you have to have an appetite for people to take risks on the performance team, or the CEO to have an appetite to take risks, because sometimes performance doesn't pay off in the numbers. A lot of the times when you try something new, your CAC will actually go up. And a lot of the times CAC has to go up to go down. And so it's constantly, sorry, I'm probably getting too deep into the answer on this, but it's just saying, like, okay, if we're going to try something new, what's my tolerance to risk? Like, are we going to, like, let's say CAC gets this high within this certain amount of time, we're going to pull the plug. But if it's like, but then there are some CEOs or CMOs that are like, oh, CAC rose a little bit, that we're just going to pull the plug altogether. Like, it's balancing long-term and short-term. It's giving things a try and putting some chips on the table. Man, I went off on a big tangent that didn't even answer your question.
Loved it. Here's what I'm getting at. Like, if you're, let's just say I'm a e-commerce startup, or I'm just a startup, and we have a product, and obviously we think it's something amazing. The consumer will love it. Like, where do we get started? How do we get going on the marketing side? And should it be more of, okay, first we have to figure out what our ideal customer looks like, and then we have to start tailoring our message to that customer, and then we have to figure out all of the appropriate channels where we're most likely to get to that individual. Like, what's a good start? Because marketing, like, in some ways it's really difficult to measure. Some ways it's hard to understand, and people can be overwhelmed with how vast it is.
Yeah. I actually got to talk to the CMO of TikTok a couple months ago, and it was honestly fascinating. He was like, I asked him kind of something similar to that, and he was like, "Can you take me high?" I had you eating out of the palm of my hand.
I was so interested, and I thought
you were like this.
My thought
every
was,
word you were
I
getting
was,
ready.
and I was thinking, Levi isn't an idiot. Look at how smart he is. And then it happened, and then I was like, nope. He's as dumb as I thought.
But let me answer your question for real.
Let me answer your question with the question. Do you have an answer to my question?
I actually do have an answer. So I am I am thoroughly convinced that marketing is just working really, really hard and doing stuff. Yes, you can be smart and deploy creativity and all that, but I think the marketers that are winning are fast and getting stuff done fast. Like at CeraVe, coming up with that Michael Cera concept, like they just said, all right, let's do it. And then they did it. And then if it fails, it's like, okay, that didn't work. Let's pivot. And another thing is there's so much unsexy work being done by CeraVe that nobody is talking about that is getting done and is getting done well. Like that Michael Cera stuff is just the tip of the spear. So in short, I would say done is better than perfect. Analysis paralysis, death by committee, that is like the killer of marketing. That is when things just start tanking and going slow and revenue starts dying, is when you're not just doing stuff and trying stuff. Now, obviously don't take risks like risks that could get you canceled, but take risks of like, okay, this could either fail, like either do well or fail. But you need to move fast and you need to take risks. You need to just do stuff. People are so much more forgiving on like how professional stuff is and just much more willing to connect to something that you put out there and that you were passionate about.
So would you consider, at this point in your career, would you consider yourself a marketer by experience or a marketer by training, by education?
I would say, I mean, I can toot my own horn on this because I have a lot of other weaknesses I can point out, but I do think that there's like, there's that core within me that I feel like I was born to do a lot of the creative things that I've been able to do. And then I've just channeled that into marketing. Like making TikToks and acting in TikToks and doing all that stuff. That's stuff I feel like I was born to do, but I just justified getting paid to do it because of understanding marketing and putting myself in marketing roles, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's justifying it through the numbers because I could just go make content and throw it out there and just for the passion of it, but I've found the convergence of what feeds my family, what I like to do, and what I feel like I was born to do.
With all of that in mind, what's the best advice, marketing, business, otherwise, or what is the best book or article that's been most influential to you in your career so far?
As someone with ADHD and with, I think, just a well-rounded quote that I always come back to, and forgive the religious reference, but it's by a former president of the LDS Church, Thomas S. Monson. It's vision without effort is daydreaming. Effort without vision is drudgery. And whether you're working for yourself, whether you're working for a company, it's like Jeff Bezos says, stress, people get stress all wrong. Stress isn't the presence of too much work on your plate. It's usually the presence of too much work you don't want to do or aren't passionate about. And so I found that if I'm doing things that I'm passionate about and I have a vision, then all of the effort is worth it and I enjoy it and I can get that ADHD hyperfocus and just dive in head first and be all about it.
Well, I was going to follow up with a question about what kind of advice would you give to our listener, but I think that you just did it. Like, I think that is the perfect place to end.
And you're just done with me.
This podcast. And if you start singing again, I might.
I'll play us off the stage. Don't worry.
I think you should. But with all of that in mind, that was terrific. I really appreciate the frankness. Thank you.
You got it, Francis.
You got it. The insight that you shared, and for your time, for spending all of your time with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And can you tell me?
Thank you for listening to the Know Your Ship podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.